slapped, that would be beaten, that would be humiliated, that would be made to divorce, made to have abortions. That's a clear planet, as Scientology says they want. A planet run by Scientology. The David Miscavige's version could be or really a nightmare of, families must disconnect from each other. They're penal camps for anybody that doesn't toe the line.
It sounds like it's kind of a totalitarian...
I truly understand. I had to go to Germany for a few days and find this out for myself with the German government. But I see now why they are so much fighting organized Scientology.
Yeah.
Because they've lived through Hitler.
Yes.
They've lived through the whole Nazism and seen it sweep and take over their country, and they've seen the horrid camps and abuses and all that. And what, in my opinion, they rightly see within organized Scientology, as run by Miscavige right now, is the beginning, the nucleus of that.
Yeah.
Of the Nazis. Like, my God, if these people got big enough, how many people would be broken up from their families? How many people who don't toe the line would be sent away to camps?
Yeah.
You see, Miscavige gets very vicious. Even in his public promotion, there's a promotion. He's had IAS seminars where talks about the total obliteration of psychiatry and how he's going to see that that's done. At the same time, Hubbard has written that a person who's been on psychiatric lines is not qualified to be in Scientology. So these people would just be sent to camps. Like, oh my God, can you imagine everybody they consider mentally ill is sent away to penal camps where, whatever happens, that would be very nasty to say the least.
It sounds a whole lot like the Soviet gulags, re-education camps, punishment type camps that people are put through, where they're put through hard labor and given a minimum amount of food just to barely sustain them, and indoctrinated in the dogma of, in that case, the party, the Communist Party, but in this case, Scientology organization, and this forced abortions thing where they actually... so young women who get pregnant if they're at one of these like bases or Sea Organization international base or whatever, they're not allowed to have children.
Well, one after another has come out and told that story, on the internet and otherwise. I mean, it's all over the place. It is so widespread. Let me tell you something. The way he gets away with this is not only by having a corporate structure that's very hard, will cost you millions to penetrate, right? But he will scream, "Oh, you're religious bigots if you're speaking out against me, and I have my rights because this is ecclesiastical policy, what we're doing, and we're entitled to our beliefs." And they'll position themselves with every decent religious organization that was ever prosecuted any time in history and say that now Scientology is being prosecuted.
Yeah.
But think about it here. I really believe in religious freedom, but I've been around to Germany, the West Coast, the East Coast. I've met a lot of the people that they consider religious bigots from the Religious Freedom Watch site, and so far every single one of them has been a very decent person.
Yeah.
Here is an example of when he says, you cannot look into us because this is ecclesiastical religious policy and scripture, and you're a bigot if you do. Well, let's read just a little bit of an example of these scriptures. Here, for example, if you don't mind, I'll just take 2 minutes.
Okay.
One is a Hubbard policy he wrote in 1955 called Dissemination of Material. Here's the quote. "The purpose of the suit is to harass and discourage rather than to win. The law can be used very easily to harass, and enough harassment on somebody who is simply on the thin edge anyway will generally be sufficient to cause his professional decease. If possible, of course, ruin him utterly." Another quote, another part of their ecclesiastical policy in Scripture, Department of Government Affairs policy of 15 August 1960. "Make enough threat or clamor to cause the enemy to quail. If attacked on some vulnerable point by anyone or any organization, always find or manufacture enough threat against them to cause them to sue for peace. Don't ever defend, always attack." And then he goes on with many, many of these, but I'd say probably the most famous one that was ever used against him, which they said was canceled, and I'll show you how it was not, was fair game. for what is called a lower condition, like if you're not doing well in life.
Yeah.
At one level, you get what's called a suppressive person order. That's somebody they consider is out to destroy Scientology. You're an SP, right?
Yeah.
And it's called fair game. And you may be deprived of property or injured by any means by any Scientologist without any discipline of the Scientologist. May be tricked, sued, or lied to, or destroyed. Now, you will see Scientology representatives saying, oh, that was canceled, it was misunderstood, and all that stuff. Well, let me read you the cancellation. Just a little over a year later, the policy called Cancellation of Fair Game came out, and it said, the practice of declaring people fair game will cease. Fair game may not appear on any ethics order. It causes bad public relations. This policy letter does not cancel any policy on the treatment or handling of an SP. so it's just saying you can still trick, sue, lie to, or destroy people. You just can't call it that.
Yeah, so I mean, in other words, he canceled it as a policy, but not as a practice.
Correct, and he canceled it as using the name. And think of this, I mean, if you go to the very first policy of what is meant by fair game, what does that even mean? He says, get this, and he's putting a whole bunch of people in this classification, like thousands have been put in this classification by David Miscavige alone in 1982, right?
Yeah.
But here it is. By fair game is meant without rights for self, possessions, or position, and no Scientologist may be brought before a committee of evidence or punished for any action taken against a suppressive person or group during the period that person or group is fair game. And it goes on, but the thing is, there are little children who want to leave Scientology and take off without approval and are declared suppressive persons, so they're fair game. I mean, just this last 10 days alone, I've heard of 2 more people who have had their children write to them to disconnect from them, saying that they're not allowed to talk with their parents anymore because their parents will either not do Scientology or who post in a forum that's critical of Scientology.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying there's thousands and thousands of people like this that this applies to. It is a very inhumane organization, to say the least.
Yeah. Well, there's a profiling tactic that's used in the Scientology organization, too, and they have this information on the suppressive person. They list 12 characteristics. However, when they label somebody, and the labeling is done by anybody in the organization authorized to do it, it's done only by that person authorizing it. There is actually no reference made to the actual characteristics. And going a level deeper than that, Hubbard came up with these characteristics not by any scientific research or anything that was published and peer-reviewed. It was basically his idea. Those were his notions. And there's actually, if you look at the definition, the accepted definition in the field of psychology of a psychopath, it's quite different from what in Scientology is called an antisocial personality or a suppressive person. I think that's an interesting point as well. But when they label somebody suppressive person, it's because somebody in the organization wants to derogatorily label that person and subject them to persecution.
Yeah, boy, that's totally true. I agree with you there.
Yeah,
it is incredibly sad. I mean, it is unbelievable. I mean, I'm not even going to bring up details of this, but I've seen it right within my own family, and I've seen it. I remember watching on TV a former spokesman of the Office of Special Affairs on CNN saying, "Oh, we bring families together, and we do not. The disconnection is not a policy that we do." And like a week later, one of my best friend's daughters disconnects from him. And I remember being called by the Commodore's Messenger organization and me being threatened if I didn't disown my daughter, who had left the staff without permission. I told him words that I cannot say on your radio program.
Yes.
And it's just rampant and ongoing.